Good evening or good afternoon. All right, good afternoon. My name is Tonya Edmonds, and I'm going to be your moderator for today's panel discussion. Welcome to the Women in Product panel. And during this session, we are going to explore product management through the lens of women who are innovators, leaders, entrepreneurs, and glass ceiling breakers. The women joining us today come from a variety of industries, backgrounds, and career paths. Now, let me give you a quick introduction to our panelists. Karin, raise your hand. Karin is an account director at Robots and Pencils, a digital innovation firm. She has over 10 years experience as a product manager for web-based and mobile applications for companies ranging from startups to large enterprises. Jamie Sterling, hi Jamie, is the VP of Product STEM at Carnegie Learning, where her team recently won the EdTech Breakthrough Award for the best use of AI in education and the best artificial intelligence solution in 2019, and the 2020 EdTech Award for their flagship middle school and high school software solution, Mathia. Brady Marchione is a product management team lead at FedEx, where she focuses on bringing e-commerce and logistics products to market. Brady has experience launching 2 e-commerce products at FedEx for small and medium, as well as Fortune 500 companies. And finally, Sophia Ogiso is an innovation engineering manager at Sheetz, who has been recognized in multiple publications, including Forbes Inc. magazine, Pittsburgh Business Times, and the Today Show for her work as an entrepreneur, innovator, industrial designer, and architectural designer. And once again, I'm Tonya Edmonds, and I'm a product manager at Carnegie Learning, where I work with one of our other panelists, Jamie Sterling, to build award-winning and innovative educational software using artificial intelligence. I began my career in teaching and education, and then moved to software development, and eventually found my way to product management. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge our session sponsor, Uber and CMU Tepper School of Business, for sponsoring this session. So let's get started. First, we encourage you to engage in the discussion and post questions in the Q&A tab to your right. We will also be posting a few polls, so please respond and help us to get to know you during this short time we have together today. So I have a few questions I'd like to pose to the group to get us started, and we will also leave some time at the end, so be sure to post your questions in the Q&A section. So let's start with each of the panelists first telling us a little bit about their journey into product management. Jamie, would you like to get us started?
Sure, thanks, Tonya. So my path into product wasn't a straight one, like many, and I was technically doing it before it was a thing at companies, that really didn't have formal product departments back in the day. Not to age myself, but I started college as a molecular biology major at Pitt, but then I shifted into majoring in political science, philosophy, and economics, so nothing to do at all with what I do today. I was ready to go to law school. I was super proud of my great LSAT score, but then I just happened to fall into digital marketing at a professor's guiding hand, and I ended up working first for a digital agency. It was a search marketing agency for Fortune 500 clients, and I was kind of bit by the making money bug, I guess, at the time. So I moved into a couple different roles there, and then moved into a innovative job in digital marketing for the art institutes. And I had a really big, we're talking multi-million annual budget to spend on what we dubbed test and learn campaigns and projects. So in fact, I was the first EDU advertiser on Facebook's new ad platform at the time, and I was an early pioneer in mobile marketing and advertising due to the budget I had. So at AI, my role kept expanding into what we now call product projects, owning portals, running websites, doing all the fun things we do today. So I moved a couple other places from there. I went into Kinder Music International. It's an early childhood company with B2C and B2B businesses serving 72 countries. And again, I had a product role before I realized it. So my CEO basically said, hey, you're technical and you're a good marketer. we own the rights to this massive children's music library, all these ebooks, videos, and online activities. Figure out how to make money off of them digitally. So that is kind of what I did for a while. And I really enjoyed that time. I learned a lot. My favorite project was leading the development of a music-themed product with LeVar Burton's company at the time, our kids. So yeah, I got to meet him. Yes, he is as nice as he seems. From there, I moved to a leadership role at a local digital marketing agency that focused on the education space. I helped build their interactive division, but then felt the calling to more meaningfully work for a company and a mission I could get super passionate about. And that's why I'm still in education with Carnegie Learning, where I've been now for 4 years almost, but 3 years in the head of STEM product role. And I'm going to drink some water and pass along to the next one.
Sophia, how about you go next? Thanks, Jamie.
Hi. So my journey into product management was in the physical space. I know product management represents different industries, and I went to Carnegie Mellon for industrial design. I always loved making and building things. Worked after school as both an industrial designer and an architectural designer for a number of years. Working with a large global corporation as an architectural designer, building out different research facilities, and then moved into like a small 1 to 3 person team, depending on how we were starting out, and worked with larger companies and emerging entrepreneurs, helping them build out their product lines and seeing their vision through to through the product development process and then onto the sales process. So I learned a lot in that time. Worked at Thermos for a little bit as a product manager, and then decided to start my own company because I saw a gap in the marketplace, and never thought I would get into the bra and the lingerie industry, but that was where the need was, that was where the market fit was. So developed a product that solved the problems of the floor-busted woman, and commercialized the product, built an e-commerce brand, and always knew that I wanted to be in product management, product development. Did not always know I would get into everything else that comes along with building a company, like fundraising and building a team and marketing, and actually learning a lot about the e-commerce side of building a business. And now I work at Sheetz, where I'm helping them build out new products and services for their company.
Awesome. Thank you, Sophia. Karin, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into product management?
Yeah, I went to Carnegie Mellon and studied information systems. So really out of college in 2000, I probably was a product manager. We didn't know what that was, but I was helping implement some of the first web-based systems that were available for different clients at IBM. And then at that point, I was doing some business analyst, product management work, and then also some development work, building reporting and different flows for the users. And then I just decided I really wanted to kind of get into the business side. I said, I want to be the person giving the requirements. So instead of writing them down. And so I went to get my MBA. So I got my MBA from MIT Sloan. I graduated in 2008. And I really was interested in retail. So I worked at Sears Holdings and did some really just general management there. It was a rotational program. And then I went to Deloitte, and this was about a little over 10 years ago. And I just happened to get staffed as a product manager at Walmart, global e-commerce. So really kind of went full circle from being a business analyst back into product management, and I just really loved it. So since 2010, or 2009, I've been doing product management. Most recently, I'm at Robots and Pencils. I've been here for 7 months as an account director, and previous to that, I was the VP of product at a legal tech AI startup.
All right, thank you, Brady.
Hi, everyone. Great to be with you today. So my name is Brady Marchione. I really started my journey. I was an economics major, graduated from undergrad at the College of the Holy Cross in Massachusetts, so small liberal arts school. And from there, I started working in marketing, actually, in Pittsburgh at a local third-party logistics company called Genco. And so I started there in marketing, eventually evolved into a strategy role. And while I was at that company, we had the good fortune to be acquired by FedEx. So being in strategy, working on business cases, thinking through how can, these two companies, 1+1 be something more than two. I had the great opportunity to work on some new product concepts and business cases. Fast forward, and some of those products actually needed product management roles, which I, had the fortune to be able to work on. So it was really interesting going from a strategy role to actually managing the day-to-day in product management. And I loved every minute. So I'm still a product manager at FedEx. I focus on e-commerce, which, many of our panelists have mentioned today. And, one of the things I love the most is building these solutions for businesses that ultimately benefit the end consumer. So looking forward to today's session.
Awesome. So very interesting and varying pen to product. We know that product roles differ from company to company and industry to industry. Sophia, can you start us out and give us a glimpse into a typical day for you?
Yeah, let's see. So a typical day is always, it's always different, right? I mean, if you're in the R&D phase of developing a product, and from my perspective, it's a physical product, you're either hands-on prototyping, evaluating, fitting, there's working with the manufacturers, the vendors to figure out the right materials and the right, any necessary changes. And, that could mean working towards filing a patent, working towards, different elements of the product. But once you have developed the product, then it turns into the costing, the, working through to the supply chain, working with the marketing team, making sure that at every step of the way you're integrating with the customer, the end user, and getting feedback so that you're ultimately designing something that they want to use, not just what you think they want to use, which is an important step of the process. So there's a lot of interaction with the end user as much as you can get. So it varies. I think my experience in product management also extended out to how do you see the holistic view of building a company and taking the product through to commercialization and then building the e-commerce brand, and how do you identify who the target customer is and what he, in my case, what he or she wants to see and how the product is represented from a marketing standpoint. So lots of things. It's not a very concrete day, but I think there's a lot of elements that go into the product management process.
Yeah, product management is definitely a very dynamic role. Karin, so Sophia, you're dealing with a physical product, and Karin, you're dealing primarily with software. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your day-to-day?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about my time at Legal Sifter, where I was where I was earlier this year and for about 3.5 years. So at Legal Sifter, I was the VP of product, but I like to say I was also the product manager. So I worked on strategy and then down to writing every story and doing testing of releases. So really managing everything from talking to customers down to working with engineers and user experience design on what the actual experience would be. And I think, for me, working at a startup where I was involved all the way from, the strategic conversation of, what is this product? How are we going to expand it, both in terms of the market, like new kinds of customers for the existing feature set, or how are we going to expand the feature set, or even, go into pulling out part of our application and turning it into an API. So looking at what we have in terms of capabilities in the software and what we've built, and for us, there were the AI models, and how we can meet user needs. So I spent a lot of time talking to users and a lot of time talking to the internal team, the business development team, the sales team, the customer, people working with the customers to understand what they were seeing in terms of trends. And then just always making sure, when you have a small team and you're working on one product, making sure that that they're working on the most important thing every day. So that's what I'd say in the end was my goal, is like, if an engineer or designer was working on something, it was something that we've already thought through that would add value for the business or the customer. And so making sure that their valuable time is spent either working on things we've proved out would be a good idea, or working towards experimenting. So yeah, always thinking, really managing the product, like what does it need today and what can we, do to enhance it in the future for more customers or to make our existing customers happy.
Awesome, thank you. So the field of product management is still very new and evolving. We're still defining it, right? And it looks different, as we already saw. What have been some of the greatest changes in product management that you have experienced as we are continuing to evolve? Brady, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, certainly the overall development of any sort of software going from waterfall to agile, and I know Karen's had everyone on this panel has had some experience there. So that's certainly been a journey that I'm sure they could speak more to as well. For me personally, it's been interesting from specific to the e-commerce industry. When you think of building products for other businesses that they're going to consume, now so many of these B2B capabilities, you're not just thinking of your customer, right, who is the business, but you're also thinking about the consumer that's ultimately going to also be using and benefiting the product that you might be helping create for that business. So for me, one big thing that's changed, at least in my world, has been really focusing on that end consumer experience and being able to connect the dots from understanding what those consumers need, but selling something and building something that enables those businesses to unlock that consumer value.
Okay. Did anyone else want to also address that question?
I could add to what Brady said, which is absolutely the same thing. I mean, in my role 3 years ago when I started, the visionaries and the experts in the company were like, what is this MPS thing you're now showing me? Comments from our customers? We are the experts. We are the visionaries. And how dare you listen to them? And we really have had 3 years of hard work to shift the mindset to it's about the problem that they need solved. And then your innovation and visionary comes into play with the solution. Because of course it's the old Henry Ford, well, if I told them that, they'd tell me they wanted a faster horse. So it's not about letting them tell you the solution. It's about understanding the problem and then figuring it out for them. But that has been the number one kind of shift and change that we've been lucky enough to experience as well.
And I guess I'd build on, the other side. So it's users and technology, right? And I think that, technology is constantly changing. And so, yeah, the move from waterfall to agile, but then, now with the innovations in DevOps and how easy it is to, clickable prototypes are so easy to develop, and really keeping on, to me, it's fun. So, but keeping on top of what is available so that you're always getting the most value, for your users, using the latest technology that actually is easier to build with, easier to maintain, or can provide value. So making sure you're working with your engineers and your designers to kind of understand as things move early enough in the process so that they can bring their ideas to the table. So I think just keeping on top of that is a constant challenge.
Yes, that's definitely part of our role, is to understand the market, to understand how our customer base and our needs are changing and shifting. So we have a lot of students and people who are attending this conference who are early in their PM career, or maybe made a transition to product management from another field. What advice do you wish someone had given you when you were first starting out in your product career? Sophia, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think I didn't, coming from a very different background, I was focused on in school, developing a product, the form and the function and the materials and the way that it's held. And there wasn't as much emphasis on, as everyone was just talking about, really integrating with the end user and really getting a lot of that feedback and incorporating that into the design process. And I think that's changed a lot since I went to school. Obviously, the design thinking methodology, and there's different ways of doing that. But I think that was one thing that I learned over time as the most important aspect of, the product management, product development, getting something out into the world. Is this something that the consumer wants? And is this something that is valuable to society? Or is this something that we're just creating for creating's sake, right? And, thinking about the circular economy, thinking about the environment, is this something that is creating an impact in a positive way? The other thing I wish I had learned from my perspective is that it is very expensive to develop a product. So Just making sure your expectations and your projections for what you want to do align with the funding and the budget that you have, so that you can create, you can see your vision through.
Awesome, thank you. What about thinking about our audience? What has been the biggest challenge that you've faced working in product management? And Jamie, since I work with you, I know we faced a lot of different challenges that we've overcome. So how about you start?
Thanks. Yes, you know them so very well. I think the biggest challenge we've personally faced at Carnegie Learning specifically is really learning how to establish a product-driven organization and quickly scale it as it's being established. I mean, essentially, the challenges we faced is we've got this great product-driven organization in place, and we're just getting our playbooks together and everything. But now we're going through a lot of mergers and acquisitions and investment funding and such things. So new organizations joining ours. Now all of a sudden, what went from our product line and platform to a platform that serves different product lines of those coming from different companies, different cultures, new employees, different processes that we're trying to flow together and really still say, no, but this is our principles and this is how we do things, and trying to kind of maintain and establish what we've already been building has been really interesting of a challenge. But I'd also say working in education technology during a global pandemic that all of a sudden made our biggest problem to solve, shifting everything and every model we have, because our whole solution is based on collaborative in-person experiences. It's student investigations of math, and they do them in groups together, and it's touching and feeling math and understanding math and computer science. And you have to shift that collaborative, innovative type of education to a full digital one-to-one, delivery form. And 60% of students aren't even checking in. Last spring, we faced a heck of a lot of challenges there too. So it's been a fun couple of years and a lot of lessons learned as we've grown and learned.
Thank you. And Sophia, what about you? Like, what are some of the challenges that you faced, especially in different industries in your career?
So I will definitely add, and I'm referencing a lot from my former company because that was the last 5 or 6 years of my experience. And, I think it's relevant everywhere. But again, this idea of, having the adequate resources to create a product that you want to develop, right? And I think that's funding, or that's making sure you have the right team in place. For me, part of, the product development process, no matter if you're physical or digital, right, there's always improvements and there's always adjustments that you're making as you're getting customer feedback. And so, from my perspective, it's okay. You've paid for a tool, or you've paid for some production, and now you need to change it, right? And that's a huge shift in the manufacturing process or the materials that you're using, and it requires it could be a ton of capital that you need. So really thinking through and anticipating the changes that might occur or the needs that might be present for your consumer base before you hit go. Is something that sometimes you have no idea, and sometimes you can anticipate just by doing more research and more testing up front. But sometimes there's the mentality of like, you just got to go, right? You got to get something out. You can't wait. You don't have the time. So balancing that it's a learning process. And I think it's for every company, no matter how small or large you are. It's like, when can you just hit go and show off your product and then keep evolving? It's
that 80-20 rule, right? It's sometimes hard because I think a lot of us are perfectionists, right? And you want 100%, not 80-20. I know that one of my biggest challenges is work-life balance, and especially because I think a common characteristic of product managers is that we are passionate about the products that we're creating and the companies that we work for. So our brains don't just shut off at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. We're constantly thinking about it and throughout the day and on the weekends. So I'm curious, how do you ladies approach work-life balance, especially in the middle of a pandemic, working from home, maybe even with your children at home and doing school? Or do you? Maybe you're having that challenge. But Brady, why don't you start us off? How do you maintain that work-life balance?
Yeah, I think certainly COVID-19 has brought some unique challenges because, as the product manager, as you described, I think we tend to be naturally very social and integrated. We've integrated roles within our jobs. And so I'm used to having a lot of that social interaction in the office. And now that we are all, we are right now 100% remote. So having all those discussions that you used to have in the hallways, it's now turned into, 40 hours of meetings, right? So I think what's I'm exaggerating a bit, but just to say that, your days are pretty much planned for you. And I think, one thing that's just really important is making sure that you're prioritizing those meetings and that work time during the day so that you do have that break, because taking time for yourself to recharge, I think that's the time that you get the most creative and can infuse those, creative ideas back into your day job. Not to say it's not challenging, though. I think being online all the time, especially in meetings, has certainly been something that's new for me, at least with COVID-19, and this new way of with everyone working from home pretty much 100% of the time. So yeah, just setting those boundaries, making sure whether it's going on a walk or yoga, something that you have that time to generate those creative thoughts to fuse back in.
I agree with that. Definitely setting those boundaries and making sure that there's not that overlap or bleed in of personal and professional, so that you can be 100% focused during your time at work, so that you can be productive, and then you can enjoy your time in the evenings and the weekends with your family, and there's not a whole bunch of mix up there. Would anyone else like to add on to how do you manage or create that work-life balance, or comments if you're struggling with it?
What? Yeah.
I mean, I think it needs. Oh, sorry, Karin. Do you want to go? Go ahead first.
Fine.
Okay.
Sorry, we're all too polite. We can talk about. Actually, I was thinking the last question. My greatest challenge was figuring out how to be in charge as a woman sometimes, and how to be nice, and when to be more assertive. But yeah, I mean, I would say for one piece of advice I got that I think about a lot is that to address work-life balance not over a day or a week, but over months and years, because really, and so I am taking, maybe working a little bit more when you start a new job or you're doing a project, but then balancing it out, or you have a tough week, so you try to balance it out with, and that's at least with software development, you're going to have a big release, things are going to come up where it's going to spike, and then if it can balance back. So kind of, if you're having a tough few days, or I'm right now in the middle of a tough couple weeks of busyness, knowing, okay, this is the path to finishing this and getting back to more normal, and figuring out, ways to make it up to myself kind of along the way. So I think just taking that longer view but I will say I'm not awesome at it. Working from home 5 days a week, going to that. And like I mentioned, I started this new job in February. So, new position and everything, and working from home. I've struggled a lot. And I think, the best advice I should be taking myself is to be probably a little easier on myself, because it ends up being counterproductive if you're beating yourself up for not working when you're not working. In the evenings. So, just being as understanding with yourself as you would be with others.
That's pretty much what I was gonna say, Karin. I mean, on my end, it's a heavy time. A lot of us are in survival mode. I mean, I have 3 children, ages 14, 9, and 7, and we're homeschooling or cyber schooling all of them here. I have a husband who's a live musician, and his industry has collapsed around him. One of his best friends is the manager of the Rex Theater, and we just watched them close last week. So our hearts are heavy as we watch our friends lose their business. It's a hard time, and it's okay to not feel right. And I think we just, especially as working women and many of us working mothers, we need to acknowledge that and give ourselves grace. Grace is the name of the game for me this year. And you will see I've acquired quite a few houseplants over quarantine. I'm doing daily yoga, and Brady said, you have to find space for peace right now, and for joy and comfort, and you have to to make it if you don't have it. And of course, the pressure's on me, right? I'm the breadwinner at the moment while we're working through, what our next steps are. And so I'm working harder than ever. And that's okay too. Like, it's about balance. If I'm working my butt off all week, then I might be laying around a little bit on Saturday. And I have to do that for myself. So take the break, give yourself grace, and we'll all survive. That's what we need to do. We don't have to thrive, although luckily a lot of our businesses are. So there's a poll right now. We're curious to see, has your business been impacted positively or negatively by COVID? Because I know a lot of us, in talking in advance, we were almost all impacted positively as a business, which was interesting to say the least. So
definitely. So I want to ask one more question before we get to some of the questions that people are putting in the chat. So we've talked about the challenges with work-life balance and COVID and, our journeys through or to product management. What is something that you love about working in product?
I love shipping. So I love that moment when something, and I mean, I'm in web software, it's an addiction that you get to feed, multiple times a week usually. But I love that feeling of, especially when you've been working on something and it goes out, and even positive, negative, it's good. It's awesome to get it out there and start getting feedback. So I love shipping.
And I'll almost say I love the opposite end of that process, which is the problem. So I love that moment where we say we've identified this problem statement or human problem. And now, our role as product managers is to come up with a solution for it. So what is that product that solves that problem? And then shipping that product is my second favorite. But that initial ideation is, to me, that's where I get the most energized.
And mine is like right in between, I think. So I'm really like the hackathons, design sprints, design thinking sessions, the things that get me from that problem identification, but really that design and that iterative process where we go, oh my gosh, all of a sudden a bunch of minds aligned on something and we have a thing that we can now start doing testing and showing. And that to me is like the moment.
Yeah, I'll definitely add to that and say that just the dynamic, like, it's not the same thing every day, right? Like, you could be in front of customers, you could work on strategy, you could be working on marketing, you could be working with your engineering team. So for me, coming from an engineering role where I was coding every day and then moving into, every day is completely different, I enjoy that piece of it. So I wanted to get to some of the questions. Has anyone ever had to put their career on pause? And if so, how have you come back from that?
I have. So I ended my role at my former company last August and decided to take some time off because it had been a very long 5 years of working day and night. Talk about work-life balance. I learned a lot about that. But, I had a daughter last October of 2018 or December of 2018. So, there was a lot of time missed up front when she was born. So I decided to take some time off and spend time with her. And then COVID hit and actually was hired for this role at Sheetz during COVID, which was pretty unexpected. But I think sometimes it's really helpful if you've been in a long-standing role, something that's been really intense, that you've been really connected to take a break, kind of reset, reevaluate. What do I want to do? What am I good at? What are my strengths? What did I love about my last role? And then figure out what would be your next step. And I think that was really helpful for me to figure out, okay, the next job I go into is going to be, hopefully a long-standing one. So what is it that I really want to do? And that allowed me to really figure out what was next.
I did something very shorter term, but I left a startup now 4 or 5 years ago. And yeah, I took 6 months off because I realized at the time that was the first time I'd taken time off of work or school ever, like since I was 4, where I, for more than 2 weeks. So, it was a luxury, that I need to pay bills. So, but, I got some severance and I was able to take it. But, it was a story to tell. Like, why did you take that? I mean, Sophia's a little more straightforward because it was, her own company, but, you do have to come up with a narrative that you feel comfortable with. And, the other big piece of advice is, network. And when you're looking for that job after you've taken a break, I bet there are people that you used to work with that would be thrilled that you're back, so it's just starting to put out feelers, and ideally before you're in the situation where you really, really need to make money. So however much time you can afford to take off, but then, really use your network so that, people that know you and understand that you took time off for whatever reason. And that story's more acceptable. But there's always a story. You can always come up with something.
I'll add, so the next question is, have any of you experienced a difficulty transitioning into a new industry? So many job descriptions absolutely require industry experience for a product manager or marketing role. I will start that by saying that is a requirement because you are a product person. So you need to know something about the product or the industry to get started. And it's a very interdisciplinary role. So some of the other skills you can learn on the job or that come from other experiences. But a lot of jobs that are super technical if I wanted to go into some industries, I need to have a little bit of background about that. But maybe someone else here feels different.
I can just add. Oh, go for it.
Go ahead, Sophia.
I'll just say quickly, this is from an entrepreneurial perspective, but when I founded my company, I knew how to, I had elements of building the product from my background, but I didn't know anything about the bra lingerie industry. And it was, a lot of networking, a lot of learning. And I think, that's a specific industry that I fell into. The product management role kind of extended throughout, a lot of the practices that I developed, but it's a lot of networking, and it's sometimes it's interesting to approach a new industry as an outsider because you come from a unique perspective. So if it can lead to results and products and opportunities that are unexpected because of that unique perspective. So it's not a bad thing. It's just a different outlook.
I was also always told you have to do things to get noticed. So sending emails with cover letters to hiring managers or product managers offering, hey, I'd like to intern, or I'd like to find a way to get in, or I'd like to try to find a project you're looking for contractors for. Are there ways to get experience that are outside of the norm? I mean, my path, once I realized I wanted to be more on the product and technology side, and I was done with marketing and advertising in the traditional sense, or digital marketing sense. And so, for me, it was about, I want to get involved in this product marketing project. I want to do this product demo. And I really started to kind of involve myself in areas around the product that were just, it was the way that I kind of cleared my path ultimately. So you have to be brave and daring sometimes when you're trying to do something new or break through the mold, and what makes you stand out.
That's a really good point, Jamie. So yeah, even if you want to break through and get into a different industry, there are some ways maybe offline or ways that you can use your current position to get that expertise or to network to get that experience that you need to get into that role. So the final question that we have time for, which I think is a great question, any advice about how to support other women on a product team that's dominated by men, especially on the development team?
Can we all answer this one? I bet we all. I have a few things to say. I'll go really quickly. My whole team is made of a diverse group of women, and it's the thing I'm most proud of, honestly. And I've found that in our business, we've had to really stand our ground, but also meet them in the middle, right? Like, it's about building trust and relationships in everything you do in product. We look at product as the hub of our organization, and we are responsible for mediating, sometimes judge and jurying, right? Every single department. And you can't do that without bridges and relationships and spokes to that wheel, right? So that's step number one. Step number two is stop apologizing. I am so sick and tired of women saying, I'm sorry, this might not be a good idea, but before every statement they make. And luckily, Tonya is not one of those women on my team, but there's just this notion of you have to be, thoughtful in what you say, you have to be firm in what you say, and you have to be non-compromising. And when there is confusion around role and responsibility, who makes this call, who's the go or no go, how does user acceptance testing happen, you need to be firm and help them understand what the role is and where the handshakes happen. And it might come down to documenting that together, sitting at the table together, but those are the things you have to do. And luckily, research proves that women can be better connectors sometimes in the office. They can be better empathizers and listeners. So if you are good at those skills, put them to your use here.
I say, I've certainly experienced this as well, working with, even in what are female industries, such as e-commerce or apparel, a lot of the developers are men, a lot of the leadership still is men. And I think, especially like when you're starting to, let's call it in your 30s, you're starting to get a leadership role and you're really put under the microscope for the first time in a way, no matter, leaders are always put under a microscope, and in product, it probably happens earlier in your career because you're leading a product team, even though you're not a manager, and I think it can, at least for me, it can really mess with your head. Am I rude? Am I pushy? Am I not a good listener? Or, do I not know enough technically? So what I find is I really help me and helps others is when you recognize another woman on your team is skilled, has a skill, really to complement them and help with their, understanding, and then also to coach them. I mean, everyone messes up. Sometimes I'm sure I am pushy. But yeah, so I think, but really, kind of, I found it's most effective when it's someone not even on your team, maybe on a side team or a designer or a developer, and really helping them, and then getting that help yourself so that you feel that support, and you're not second guessing yourself can be a big waste of time and actually make you worse at your job. So helping them kind of see themselves clearly and having other people do that for you.
Yeah. I'll also add to what Jamie said, it's about building relationships. So if you have, as a product manager, let's say there's another woman on the engineering team, ask her if she wants to go for coffee. Build, you don't have to talk about work. I think a lot of the relationship building when we were in the office happened in the kitchen, right? It happened about me asking about a kid's soccer game or about a movie or a book that we had a common interest in. So don't get so deep in the day-to-day work that you're not taking time to build those relationships with people, because ultimately it elevates your goal in bringing a product to market or a feature to market. So think about how can you better work with different people on the team. What's their work style? Do they prefer Slack over email or a CubeSide chat? So thinking about how to work with different people that have different interests and work styles, and sometimes not even talking about work and just being interested in them. Hey, I noticed you were off and you weren't feeling well. How are you doing? Or how was your vacation to Italy? So think about that relationship building, because that is our job as product managers. We are the glue between all these different departments that bring together our product.
I have one thing to add to that. I second everything everyone said. I also want to remind all the women that are listening that you represent at least half the population. So your perspective and your input and your needs are like probably more valid, if not just as valid, right, than everyone else on the team. So just remember that you are representing a huge segment of the population that like needs your voice to be heard. So just remember that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think trust yourself and, you know, look for mentors and then become mentors, because I think you can also learn so much from helping others that might be more junior in their careers. And you're going to learn a lot about yourself through those conversations that you have, as well as learning from maybe those that might be in positions higher than you as well.
That was an excellent segue, because the session is now officially over. But I did want to say, I know most of us, or at least all of us, are on LinkedIn. So if you're looking for a mentor or want to continue the discussion, I think I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think all of us are open to continuing this dialogue. I don't know if Excel Events has a platform where we could do that, or if we find some other way to connect on LinkedIn. But especially for those of you who are in the Pittsburgh area, I would love to continue the conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.